Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the AAO clinical podcast series. I'm Dr. Andrew Pucker. I'm a fellow of the Academy. I'm also a diplomate in the cornea contact lens and refractive technology section, and today I'll be your host. I'm joined today by Dr. Justin Kwan. He is the Senior Manager on Myopia Management at CooperVision, and we'll be discussing axial length targets in myopia control. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dr. Pucker.
So thanks for being on the channel today. Could you please just give us a little background on why this is an important study and kind of what's been done before that we should know about before we get into it?
Yeah, I think the genesis was really how do we explain MiSight's efficacy in a different way, right? We already know it is very effective, so much so, of course, it got the FDA approval nearly 2 years ago. But what if we could somehow look at normal eye growth in children with myopia and children without myopia and see how it all kind of stacks up against each other. So this is just another approach because we did want to make everything as generalizable as possible, knowing that this was a 4-site international study. So that first step was, are these kids like the kids in the US? And secondarily, how effective is MiSight expressed in another way?
So before we get into the paper, there's this thing that's kind of complex and I'd like you to explain, which is virtual cohorts. So could you kind of tell how the authors modeled the study to get to the goals of it?
Yeah, we figured a virtual cohort was, one, just needed in the first place because at the start of year 4, we lost the control group. So now there's nothing to compare against on the y-axis, so to speak, in terms of efficacy against the control group, because now all the children were wearing MiSight. That was the right thing to do, to not deprive treatments from the control group any longer. But if there was a virtual control group, we could then make comparisons and now calculate, and for the first time, to our knowledge, quantify a 4, 5, 6-year efficacy of a treatment such as MiSight. So the way you kind of form a virtual control group is you have to understand in maybe a diverse population how they grow in an untreated fashion, right? So Brennan et al. Did a study where they looked, I think, included 63 eligible studies to kind of map the Asian and non-Asian eye growth by age, which I think is super useful and important, actually. And step 1 of us comparing is we can't start comparing yet. We have to validate against this Brennan model, which we're very grateful to get to use and kind of do it that way. So we looked at our 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds when they started the MiSight study, unequal groups in each of those ages. We had to weight them a little differently, but man, they did fit this model very, very well. Almost, I would say, too well, because one of our sites is Singapore, so I felt like our control group was just about 20% over to the Asian side, perhaps because of the Singapore group. But we were able to validate the control group and the treated group as well against this model.
So that's cool. So what I think you did and what you're saying is that you took your MiSight data and tried to make these other 2 big longitudinal studies look like that data, take some data out of that to make a cohort to compare to your study. So what did you gain from doing that?
Right, so the 2 big studies you mentioned in the paper, it was the Orinda study and then the Singapore study of, again, untreated myopes and emmetropes and these population cohort studies that are so valuable. And so the 2 comparisons that had to be made was the control group in the MiSight study. Were they like the myopes in the Orinda and Singapore study? And they were, and that was good. It was very similar, followed that trajectory. And now we have this MiSight group that were treated with MiSight that got this reduction in axial length elongation. And what are we going to compare those against? Well, it was very fitting that we were able to compare them to the emmetropes in the Orinda and the Singapore data set. And interestingly enough, their eyes grew in a very slow and measured fashion, very much like the emmetropes. So that was exciting to see because we think of emmetropes as the, I don't know, the goal or perhaps even the maximum, the ceiling that we could achieve. So that MiSight was able to not only do better than the control group, but as good as emmetropes is really great to see.
I think that's a really good point. So maybe MySight and other products that are out there for myopia management are kind of maxing out how much we can slow eye length.
Yeah.
But that says that eyes are still growing. So how much should a practitioner expect their myopes to grow if they're growing at a normal pace?
Yeah, it's very age dependent. I think the kids that are 5 to 10 years old, if they're under great myopia control, they should be growing about 0.15 to 0.18 millimeters per year. And if they're 11 and older, we should very easily be able to achieve 0.1, 0.09 millimeters, 0.08 millimeters per year. So it kind of makes me think of, wow, now that we have age by age, it's almost like setting a target IOP for glaucoma, right? We're following these kids every 6 months, and if our target is emmetropic eye growth, which is about 0.1 millimeters per year, at the 6-month visit, we should be seeing about 0.05, right? And so if we're not, then we have the opportunity to make an adjustment. But I don't know if Dr. Pucker, you would agree that maybe the 6-month data point is too soon to make a decision, because there could be growth spurts and we don't exactly know what the 12-month data point will look like. So in the context of changing treatment, this gives us like a 6-month target, a 12-month target, and maybe we'll do something at the 12-month if needed.
I totally agree. In my clinic, 6 months is a data point. It's a good time for compliance check.
Yeah.
But there's seasonal variations in eye
Yeah,
growth
that's
that
right.
we need to care about. So I tend to not make a change for a year, and hopefully not long.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully longer than that.
Yes,
But,
yeah, very much so.
But that's all great stuff. Is there any other key points you want to add before we close out today?
I just think like there's just so many analogies to both treating myopia, like treating ocular disease, like treating even a medical condition. And I think all of this talk of like what's age appropriate or age normal growth, and it all kind of mixes into the conversation, because what parent wouldn't want to treat a medical condition, or what parents would let a medical condition get worse? And now we have some of these axial length targets to really celebrate successes with parents, but also just express some concern that we need to get on this, right? And we're with you every 6 months, and if we're reaching our goal, that's great, and your child gets to benefit from contact lens wear at the same time. So it's really that holistic thing that this science brings out, is really helps our conversations with parents.
Amazing. So I'd like to thank you, Dr. Kwan, for being here today, and also for CooperVision for bringing us this great research. And I'd also like to thank you all for tuning in today.
Cool. Thank you very much.